Welcome to Why Are You Awake? Paul Farahvar here, your host. This week we have comedian Ian Abramson. Make sure you follow him on all the socials right here. Also, if you're listening to this podcast, go over to my YouTube page and watch it at youtube.com/Paul F. Comedy. Also, check out my website, Paul F. Comedy, for upcoming dates. And also, follow me on Instagram and all the social medias right here. And check out our sponsors. Hey, gang. As some of you know, I used to be a practicing lawyer in Chicago. I no longer practice, but from time to time, I need a lawyer. And when I need a lawyer, I call my friend Scott Shapiro. Scott Shapiro has been practicing law for over 25 years in Chicago. He does it all, from workers' compensation to personal injury, employment issues, and even entertainment law and contract needs. If you need a lawyer, call my friend Scott. 312-648-8800. That's 312-648-8800. Or you can email him at scott@scottshapirolegal.com. Tell him I sent you. You're welcome. It's time for Why Are You Awake? Wait, are you ready?
I'm so ready. Why are you awake?
That's not how...
This is awesome.
Yeah, look at that. Professional. Wow. Well, we're just going to get into it. Why are you awake here? Ian fucking Abramson here.
That's right.
Ian, I think we're in the same class of comedy, although I'm not sure.
That feels right, for
Okay.
sure. Yeah. I remember doing shows with you, and I remember doing open mics with you.
Yeah. You used to come to Merkel's 2.5 persons.
Yeah, dude.
That was where we met.
Yeah.
13 years ago. One of the greatest open mics in history. You're taking notes. I love this.
I wrote down 13 because I was like, okay, so that's how long
13.
I've been doing it. That sounds right. Yeah. That sounds almost exactly right. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Ian Abramson, I have been a fan of yours for so. I'm going to tell you something. It's I remember when you did Conan O'Brien. First of all, Conan O'Brien is like my hero.
Yeah.
And when you were the first person that I knew personally to do Conan O'Brien, and it was like, I remember watching. I was like, this is so fucking cool. I watched it again today, and it still holds up. I mean, so good. And the fact that you got to do Conan O'Brien, like that was my only bucket list item. I mean, so cool to see you do that, and so deserved and so fucking awesome. So that's the first thing I want to say. Second thing,
unbelievably kind.
You're the kind of comedian that I don't know anything about you, because your comedy, it's like one of those things where it's like, you walk away. If you watch a set of Ian Abramson, you don't know anything about you. If you see 5 fucking minutes of my set, you know everything about me. But you are so abstract and so like removed from comedy. It's just a performance.
Oh, man.
So like doing this podcast to me is like, I am going to learn who you are, because I don't know shit. You're one of those people that like no one knows anything.
Totally. Totally.
How do you pull that off?
I think it started just kind of as a vibe of like, if I didn't want to answer a question,
put the mic closer to you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. If I didn't want to answer a question, I would answer with a joke, right? And then it just became so much more fun than being like, if something came up like, oh, what is your mom like? It's like, it's half a joke already. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
You're so, I don't know. I was young and probably insecure about this or that, and also it was more fun to be making jokes. If I'm in open mics and stuff, especially.
Well, I mean, just anything. Like
right.
You do comedy where it's like there's certain types of comedians that do like traditional comedy where you're telling stories or you're just doing punchline jokes. You have this type of comedy that's a performance-based comedy, and people leave there obviously entertained, but they don't know anything about you. We don't even know if your real fucking name is. Is your real name Ian Abramson? Is it?
It is. It is actually my real name. There are comedians that switch names, that have fake names. And
well,
such,
I mean, your name sounds like
it
kind
sounds
of
fake
professional.
A little bit. Yeah. It
and
does have a little fakeness to it.
Everything about your persona is kind
sure.
of like this circus ringleader.
That's so nice. I love that. When anybody walks out on stage, it's instantly funny to me that we don't know anything about them.
Sure.
Right? And then as a stand-up, you're just getting to say like, this is the truth about me. And early on, I was like, oh, it's so fun to know that I'm lying. They know that I'm lying.
Sure.
If they know that I'm lying and I know that I'm lying, it was just an interesting way to get a laugh or something.
Sure.
I don't know. You're kind of drawn to the things that you're drawn to. I also, it's like I didn't want to talk about my life directly. So if I was like, let's say I wanted to talk about a nagging mother is an archetype. That's not the kind of mother that I have. But if I wanted
Sure.
to do a nagging mother kind of joke, I would think about like, what does nagging feel like, right? It feels like a debt collector calling over and over again, right? So then I'm already telling a joke about a debt collector, and it's about my mom.
Well, when you said that, that's not where my brain went.
Where did your brain go?
My brain, I just started thinking about my personal mom and situations where that could or could not apply. Because I think of it as a personal thing. You went to fucking debt collector. So that's crazy.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Who were your influences when you started comedy?
Zach Galifianakis was like very hot when I was starting,
Sure.
right? So like that was I wanted to be
I
him
can see
so
that.
bad. I mean, for sure,
Yeah.
right? Steve Martin also like a huge influence. Maria Bamford, Groucho Marx, like
see
dude, Robin
Groucho.
Williams, Conan, like there's.
Yeah.
I loved anybody who felt like they were really giving it their all. It just felt like they were trying to push themselves.
Let's go back a little. Where did you grow up? I don't even know. I want to say New York. I don't even know.
Wild, yeah.
No one knows. Are we allowed to know? Does your Wikipedia say?
I don't think I have a Wikipedia, but if you're out there, go ahead and create it for me because
I have a Wikipedia.
I refuse to do it myself, but what it would mean for a young boy like myself to have his own Wikipedia page, can you imagine?
It hasn't changed anything for me.
That's right. That's also why I'm like, I don't know. All of those getting verified on things, right? I've been verified on some things, and
you have TV credits and shit.
You've got a wall of degrees
I
behind
do.
you, right?
You guys can't see them,
how do you feel about your degrees?
Well, we're both doing the same thing, huh? And we're not using any of that here. So
I don't. So it's like whatever those degrees represent is different than the degrees themselves. I don't know what I'm saying.
So where are you from?
And that is the problem right there. You see what I'm saying? My hometown was called Moreno Valley, California. It's in Southern California between Los Angeles and San Diego. A few hours outside of Los Angeles. A lot of warehouses, a lot of desert.
Blue collar town?
It has horses and gang violence and therefore is hard to categorize. Breaking Bad was written to take place there originally, and then they got better tax breaks in Albuquerque. But the vibe of Breaking Bad, which is like kind of suburban, kind of desert, kind of meth, it's that, right?
Did Tim Barnes live out there too, or you guys grew up together? Okay.
Tim,
I do remember
in
you
middle
guys
school,
together,
right? Because we moved to Chicago together. We met in high school, but he moved from LA to there. The area that I grew up in was often a place to get a more affordable home and then commute to LA. But that's a long commute. Right. I went to an abandoned mental hospital that they had turned into a state school, and he went to the community college with the best film program in the country.
What was your college name?
Cal State Channel Islands was what it was called, but it's in Camarillo. But it was
I've heard of Cal State.
Right. So Cal States there's two state school systems in California because California's huge. There's the UCs and the Cal States. They had just opened Cal State Channel Islands, and I went there.
Were you an only child?
I have a sister that is 6 years older.
Only child syndrome.
It very much.
I have an older brother that's 6 years older too.
Are you serious?
I swear to God.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely an only child
vibe.
So
I'm big into birth order. It's when you're 6 years apart, you have the symptoms of younger child and only child, which is the two worst things that you can ever have in terms of attention-seeking behavior, things.
Wow, here we are. Holy shit, Paul, that's wild.
I knew you had. I can just tell, but
You're like, well,
Well,
this kid's
I have
needy.
it too. Yeah.
I get it. No, for sure. Kindred spirits.
Before you get to, let's talk about when you were a kid in like junior high or whatever. Were you like a loner kid? Were you kind of like a theater already, or what were you like?
I got into theater in high school. In middle school, I got into Weird Al, right?
Sure.
Which
I
was,
loved Weird
and
Al.
I didn't, that was like super early comedy influence for sure,
Of
right?
course.
Yeah. He was everything to me.
Junior high, were you getting in trouble because you were like
I was a
attention seeker?
contrarian that would kind of try. I was like kind of annoying nerd Boy Scout vibe. That's kind of a
push the boundaries with the teachers until you can?
little bit.
Did you have friends that were like you, or were you just kind of
Not.
loner
I did
kid?
not quite yet have friends that were like me. That is such a good question.
Yeah, I'm a good question answer. Ask her. Interviewer, shut the fuck up. We'll edit this all
Yeah,
out.
you're great at this.
I'm good at these question things. Yeah.
I was friends with the other nerds in middle school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not into sports or anything like that.
Never. But Boy Scouts was very active, right? Like that was like we were a backpacking troop. We'd go camping once a month. So we'd be doing like
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
you're
it was
outdoorsy?
intense.
Were you watching comedy on TV as a kid, or were you like
making friends laugh. I remember specifically in high school, and Tim and I are very like yin and yang, right? He definitely opposites. Tim at the time is wearing like a neon Wolverine button up. I had hair down my back and was wearing a trench coat.
oh boy.
Yeah, it was a
So
vibe.
people were afraid of you, probably.
But it was a smiley version of this, and it was a beige trench coat.
Oh,
and also, yeah, I could probably.
Were you staying up late as in like middle school or anything like that, like watching late night TV or like?
I was on the internet a lot. And that was very exciting because I could talk to my friends. I could talk to girls all over the world.
When you got to high school, you said you found theater.
Yes.
You were going to do that no matter what.
Throughout high school, probably thought I was going to be a novelist, and then ended up being like, oh shit, theater's the thing that makes sense for me to chase with everything in mind. But I remember going to like, you're signing up for classes a few days before high school begins. And there was a table of 4 kids and it said theater, and all of them had they had a very fun version of the high school version of like, we don't even want to be here except that we're having the time of our life, which was fun. And
you were like drawn in, or were you like?
I was intimidated, and it like that pit in your stomach that you get before going up at an open mic where you're like, I want to do well, I whatever that is was like, oh man. So like I remember walking up nervously and being like, how do I get involved?
Impress these people.
Right. And not realizing that no one else was walking up, that this was about to be a very tiny group of people that, like this is
But you don't know that at the time. Yeah.
No. Auditions for the first play are like at least a few weeks into high school now. So I've been waiting for them and I'm excited. One of the teachers decides, I will give you 20 points extra credit if you just audition for the play.
To everybody challenge
To
it?
everyone that he has classes
In the
with.
class,
He has
yeah.
6 classes of 30 kids. That meant that when I auditioned for this play, I was like, holy crap, dude, there's like 100 people. And I was so nervous and like, wow, I remember in 9th grade saying I could pantomime and it definitely being an exaggeration. And her being like, okay, make a sandwich, and being like, I did not expect you to test me on pantomime right now. And me trying to be like, okay, no improv training, just trying to, but I did get cast, and then I was part of the theater crew, and that just kind of carried through.
Those same 4 people that you saw at the table, did they become
Robbie, Sam,
Yep.
Sarah?
Okay.
Yeah, I really can think of exactly who those were.
There's certain comedians that you're like, I wonder what they were like in high school, but I feel like I know exactly how you were. Like, were you guys always just on and annoying to each other, or were you guys like?
There were shenanigans that didn't involve alcohol. There would be like, I remember sleeping over at a friend's house The friend was a gay man.
You can pull it to you so you don't have to.
The friend was a gay man.
Yeah.
And it was one of, when you're a theater kid, your high school experience is finding out that most of your friends are queer on some level, right? But this was like one of my first friends that were like, yeah, I'm gay. And I was like, okay, cool. And that meant that it was logical to my mother that I could sleep over at his house, and also logical to a young lady to sleep over at her house. But all we did was like sleep next to each other. For me, it was like, I can't believe this is happening right now. And it was like, kind of nothing is happening right now.
Right.
They were both in the room, but me and the gal were on the floor.
Okay.
Dude, I was like,
You're a kid with
14,
hormones,
15, your brain is exploding, right?
Yeah.
You're just like, what in the world? Like
a soft wind would give you a boner, and then you see
there's
a girl.
no way. I'm sure
You're just up all night just staring at the ceiling.
It was a tense night.
Anything happened?
No, nothing.
Were your parents supportive of you doing the arts?
Yes, definitely. I think.
What's that like?
My sister is 6 years older. My parents were divorced by the time I was in high school. Both parents remarried. They're kind of ready to get their second kid out the door. Getting your kid into theater is a great way to have a lot more time at home.
With your new spouse.
Kind of, yeah.
That's how you interpret it now in therapy.
It not totally, but also just like, dude, a teenager at home probably is never fun.
You get to high school, you guys are having these sleepovers, and there's nothing happening.
Oh, it was hypersexual. Theater is hypersexual.
So people were hooking up with each other.
The situation I'm describing was that we cuddled all night.
Yeah.
Right? And that was like, it felt like a sexual experience,
sure,
but it was not. But then within a year, I had some version of, I don't have okay. I got a blowjob, Paul.
At 15? 14?
Yeah,
That's pretty impressive.
Is it?
I mean, I'm a late bloomer. I didn't kiss a girl until I was, I think, a junior or senior in high school.
Wow.
All the girls, I was their friend. Like I was this harmless small kid, and I had no confidence. You're performing. You're probably good at what you're doing. You develop confidence. I didn't have that. I was drinking, and that's how I got confident.
It would make me seem very confident, but then I've never been good at making a move on a person. I'm married now, and I'm yet to kiss my wife. No.
Still don't know how to do it. It's weird. Yeah.
No, we have sex several times a night. I'm just kidding.
A year. Yeah, I got it. I know. I've heard about marriage. Yeah. When you were in high school, though, were you staying up late, or were you like a night owl, or
for sure? Because
but you guys aren't drinking or anything, right? You're just like, what are you guys watching? Romeo and Juliet.
I remember a couple of attempts at making a monster movie of some kind. Somebody had a camcorder. I do remember that.
Okay.
I don't remember that being edited or turned into anything. There would be lots of watching movies. The degree to which we loved to...
You would like pause it and talk about it, probably? Like a book club?
Sometimes. I still do that very much with my friends. That's that is my favorite Saturday night, is watching something we've never seen before that is interesting for some reason, right? And my friends and I that love movies, we all love very different kinds of movies. I have a friend who loves kung fu movies, and he's like, right. And I'm like, that's not my vibe. I've never in my life, that's not what I was watching in high school. There's a lot less stand-up in LA. So this is also part
This is what you guys do. You're not getting stage time. Yeah.
This is also, there's a lot of writers and such.
Sure.
And yeah.
Does comedy come into play while you're in high school, or does that happen later?
If I was just going to track comedy, I would go like Weird Al in middle school, Rocky Horror Picture Show right at the beginning of high school. It's much more riffing and joking about movies. Stephen King is in there somewhere, because I also, like, at this point, I'm like, right, a novelist is the thing.
Oh, novel. Okay. Yeah. You go to college. What are you majoring in?
I start off majoring in English, but by the end of year one, I've switched to theater, desperately wanting to perform. During the summers in college, I would work at summer camps. That's a huge part of, you're at summer camp from the moment you wake up. On some level, you're kind of performing in exactly the way that I love to.
Summer camp for kids, and you were like the counselor?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Do you start doing comedy at that point?
Because I go from English to theater, I think I'm going to be a playwright, even though the thing I'm enjoying the most is the acting, by far, right? But I know I do not want to do acting. Is like, I don't want to go to LA on audition. I don't want to go to New York and audition.
Well, what did you want to do? If you
I
don't
wanted to
do
write and I wanted to perform.
In your own stuff.
Eventually, that's what I kind of came upon, right? I discovered vaudeville and hearing about how these performers would get to work on 5 minutes for 15 years, right? And we know what 5 minutes can be. But then we also open that up to a 5-minute juggling act, right? If you spend 15 years on a 5-minute juggling act, holy shit, that is going to be an impressive juggling act. I loved that ability to just let me just try it again. Let me just try it again.
That's discipline.
There was a discipline to it that I was like, God, if I could get that. In college, somebody's putting on an open mic. But my college is so small. My friend is like, oh, I'm going to do an open mic. It's mostly poetry and playing guitar and stuff. And he's literally looking for somebody to do stand-up and asks me to do it. And I'm like, I didn't grow up watching Premium Blend much, right? I would a little bit.
Did you watch late night TV when they have acts at the end, or not really?
Not much. Yeah.
So he asked you to do this?
Yes. And so I go up, I told a couple stories from my life, which is I know. It's you wouldn't, it's at the time, it just felt like the most natural thing to do. I told a story about getting my colon checked by a doctor, right? That was, I was like, oh, I'll milk this one.
That's a new premise.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I was like, here we go, folks. I remember sitting down and how could I write a joke? I want to try to do that if I'm going to try to do stand up, and coming away with something about my grandfather left me his submarine and I got it converted into a car,
just
wacko shit, yeah. Right? And I remember it going fine, and when you're in, that setting is a pretty nice crowd, right? They're down to hear you, and they know it'll be over soon, no matter what. Right?
Yeah, it's an open mic,
right? And specifically, you're the only comedian, right?
Sure.
It's been guitar. Whatever you do, if you suck for 5 minutes, it'll be interesting for 5 minutes.
So it went well. What did you feel, a rush? Were you like, this is what I want to do right away? Or were you like, it's okay?
I remember being terrified to perform. I still feel terrified to perform in a way
really?
Not really. To you, I can say, no, you get the difference. But that feeling that you're I'm going to perform, it no longer feels like terror to me, right? But it's get ready, just get ready. I remember plays in high school, just all day, just what am I supposed to do with this feeling? Oh my God, I have to do this? Do I know my lines? Oh my God.
See, I miss that. I feel the only time I feel that energy is when I'm doing new stuff or it's a new situation.
Yeah.
But when you did that first show, were you like, okay, this is...
Maybe a few months later, the same guy puts on another open mic, and this time a couple folks are going to try stand up, and now I get to have the feeling. One, I'm immediately the veteran.
I've done one show, yeah. No,
yeah, 3 months ago, right?
But it's still a pecking order, yeah.
Yeah, and it was. I remember just feeling like, oh man, I got to do whatever I can to be better than these guys.
Yeah.
But again, I remember being nervous, and I remember realizing that it really is just writing shit, where I was like, okay, I do like writing. I would say over the next year, I'm kind of playing around with the idea of stand-up, and I'm finally starting to watch stand-up, WTF is kind of just starting to take off, maybe.
Sure. We're not going to plug another podcast on this podcast, but it's referring another podcast for a veteran comedian. I don't believe the podcast is still going on. So now you're invested into this stand-up.
Now it's probably a hobby.
Yeah. You're still doing theater? Are you doing plays and stuff?
Yeah, the school does one play a year. I was very frustrated in college. I was very...
Because you weren't getting to perform, really, right?
It was supposed to be college. I was supposed to finally be like... shouldn't there be a dozen clubs that I'm every night of the week I'm like leading a new life? I'm kind of living for these acting classes, right? Like I
once a week,
3 hours, and the first hour and a half would be warm-ups, and warm-ups in an acting class. I kind of refuse to do them if I can get away with not doing them in a situation, because it's also like it doesn't come up much anymore. But if I realize that's about to happen, I can often kind of like just take a step back from the group.
What's a warm-up?
A warm-up, it starts with the it'll be like vocal warm-ups. Mo me me ma mo me me ma mo me me ma mo moo. Right? You're doing okay, let's loosen the jaw. You know,
like running around the room, stuff like that. We did that in improv classes too, I think.
5-10 minutes of it sounds awesome.
An hour and a half.
So like once you get past that phase, then it's like, okay, now let's walk around as a tree. Let's do the stuff that you hear about acting school.
How do you walk around as a tree?
I remember it's always the one I think of, because what it is like, I want you, it was specifically like just stand in one spot. Like you were just a single thing. Okay, but you're a tree. Let yourself be a tree. Let yourself. What does it feel like to have your feet in the ground?
It's like an episode of Portlandia.
Right. And I'm like 19. I'm way too cool for this shit. I work at summer camps. You know what I mean? Like I don't.
You want to perform.
5 years ago, I was in a beige trench coat, and now I have had sex. Give me performance opportunities.
Yeah. When did you start doing stand up? Like outside of this open mic that happened?
Junior year feels like a hobby. Senior year, halfway through, I go through a breakup, and I'm like, I need to figure out what I want to do. And I really lock into comedian, and that domino hits, well, where are you going to go to become the best comedian that you can be, right? And I'm researching as hard as I can. I'm researching harder. I haven't worked this hard on anything really in my life in that way, right? Where I'm like, I have to figure this out.
Sorry, go ahead.
I found like Brody Stevens on Facebook, and I was like, do you have any advice? Right? Like I was doing a lot of shit like that. Yeah. He very sweetly said, like, I would say don't start in LA. Why would you need to do that? LA is a great place to come after perhaps you have some chops, but why start there? That stuck with me on some level, right? I didn't end up going there when it was just it would have been an easier move in a lot of ways. I landed on Chicago and thought I'm going to become an improviser. Improv was really kicking into gear for some reason and during that time. And at this point, I know that Tim is very smart and very talented, and that Tim is going to sit in the back of the room unless I drag him somewhere. Right. There's a little bit of that energy. Right.
And you also don't want to go to a city by yourself.
At that point, there was a third, my other childhood best friend, who instead, not long after, was like, actually, I want to start a family, and does that, and it ends up just being Tim and I. Tim and I are on the same plane, and we have so little resources and credit score and we can't even get a place together.
You come to Chicago.
We come to Chicago and just kind of start trying to figure it out. I remember going to Lottie's, but it was a Wednesday.
Lottie's is open mic, yeah.
Lottie's is a Tuesday open mic that I went on Wednesday, and they were like, actually, the open mic was last night. So then I went to Cole's, and if you know anything about
Cole's
that open mic,
Wednesday night,
right? The list was like more than 50 people. Right,
yeah.
It was. If I had gone to Cole's first, perhaps I would have only been 30th or something, but I was like deep. I had been on a plane that morning. I was like falling asleep.
Back then? Do you remember?
It was Cameron and Adam for sure. Oh, cool. Cameron Esposito and Adam Burke. Cameron was a few months away from moving to.
Do you remember what month it was? So when you
February.
I think you started like literally a month or two before me. That's crazy.
Wild.
Because Cameron had moved right when they were doing going away parties for when they started.
Tommy McNamara's first
Tommy Mac was,
doing stand-up ever was Cameron Esposito's like going away open mic at Kohl's.
Yes.
So he goes up trying like he has just had the day of like, I've been nervous all day. I'm trying this for the first time.
No one knows who he is. Yeah.
Right. And then
Tommy.
Someone right before him is like in tears, like, Cameron, you've changed my life. This open mic has been everything to me. Like, and give it up for Tommy McNamara. Like, so, Taco Bell, like.
Yeah, he was in our class too. We all started at the same time. That's crazy.
Love that.
You do Kohl's, you go up first time, you're last on the list.
For sure.
How did it go?
Mediocre at best, but also it's late at an open mic at this point. Yeah.
And it's a hard room, notoriously, especially if you're not known. Were you doing like your style of comedy, or were you telling stories?
Once I realized I'm going to move to Chicago and start doing comedy, I'm like, I want to get started as quickly as I can, and I can't afford improv classes, but but I've done just enough stand-up. I can just start doing more stand-up. That means that I have about 6 months where maybe once or twice a week I'm doing stand-up in Orange County, California, before I move to Chicago. When I hit that stage at Kohl's, I am like, I have a completely forgettable set to anybody but me. But that said, it was the most exciting thing in the world. And then I'm getting to see all of these comics, right?
Yeah. You're at Kohl's at the prime of the Chicago comedy scene. And during COVID, I went back. I have all the open mic sign-up sheets from Merkel's. And like, you look at that list of comedians that we were doing shows with, doing Conan, all that stuff. It's surreal.
Yeah, I can think of that room so specifically.
I hated Kohl's, though. I'll tell you that right now, because
sure.
It was so intimidating.
I love doing Merkel's because it was hard for me.
Really?
In the same way that it's like there's these different worlds of comedy, right? Like we're kind of building ourselves to be these different comedians, so different rooms are going to be more natural for us.
Kohl's is more for you.
It didn't feel that way at first. It really didn't.
I feel like you were a scene darling pretty quickly.
Hey, what can I say? There was a brief period when that was happening. As that kind of happens in the alt world, there's kind of like a cycle of now let's raise up this person, okay, and now let's raise up this person.
Right.
What do I do now is the hard part, right? It felt like everyone wanted to be Kyle Kinane, Beth Stelling, Cameron Esposito, and more globally, Louis C.K. was kind of like...
Yeah, that was big around our time.
Right.
Yeah,
that was like prime. Like,
I wanted to be Anthony Jeselnik when I started.
It was so much more fun to watch somebody that wanted to be an Anthony Jeselnik, and in my case, a Zach Galifianakis, right?
Sure.
It was just that stuff.
Did you ever go back to telling stories about your personal life?
I tried it. It did. I tried everything the way that you do, right? I'm sure that you have tried alt shit over the years.
I've done alt shit, and I'm always like, give it to someone else. I'm like, I can't do this.
I get it, dude. Right?
But I have this idea, and I think this would be really good. And then a couple comedians did it, and then they don't do comedy anymore. I'm like, maybe I should try it again. Let's talk about that time. So you're doing all these open mics. I remember your audition for Laugh Factory, by the way, because I was hosting you when you did it.
Yeah,
and I remember sitting there with Jamie Masada, and I think he passed you right away. You took off your shirt. You had the letter.
He did not pass me, but he was very nice.
You didn't get passed by Jamie Masada?
Not personally, not right away. Certainly, it took me a bit.
Well, everyone,
but he was nice. Yeah. He was nice and encouraging, and in like a genuine like. I've heard a lot of different versions of stories of talking to Jamie Masada. It was not a natural home for me, and I felt so welcome. I felt like it was like, you can go up and make an ass of yourself just like anybody else. And I would sometimes eat shit and sometimes start to figure it out and be like, oh, hell yes. And that's essential. I don't know.
I remember a couple of comedians who are now huge didn't do well in that room. And I remember Sarah Sherman.
Yeah.
She wouldn't do well there sometimes. And she's like, I don't get it. I'm like, this is how I feel every fucking time I do a show at your room and wherever.
For sure.
And it's like, it doesn't matter. Because what I do, I can do well in these rooms. But doing like average work where I can appeal to everybody is irrelevant. You're appealing to the 10 people that just saw you in that room of 100 or 200 or whatever, 10% who are now going to follow you to the depths of the earth. And that's what you need. And I think that's nice. The key. And I feel like with you and people that like have that skill set, it's like you do Kohl's and then you guys quickly start getting booked on shows in Chicago, I assume.
I think relatively quickly. It didn't feel quick, but of course, I think I was in Chicago that first time. I lived here for like 3 years and then moved to LA.
Right.
And it was like kind of a whirlwind. Dude, like the the fear that you feel the first time you do a black room.
Oh,
like
yeah.
you're just like this is like, of course this is just like anything else, but
I can't picture you doing a black room right now.
It's like I can't pretend like I've done it a ton.
Did you do well?
I can think of a
jokes and
couple
notes?
times that I never did jokes and notes. I never did jokes and notes.
Scared.
Right, and I always say to myself, maybe if I was here longer, but like that would have been scary.
Yeah.
I would be scared today if I
I'd
did
be
it.
scared for you. Back then.
The stories I've heard make me scared.
So the 3 years you're here, though, you're getting stuff. What makes you go to LA?
I start producing that show's called 7 Minutes in Purgatory, and
Yes.
I started as I'm starting to really get some level of grasp on stand-up of like, okay, this 10 minutes at least is fine.
Yeah. 7 Minutes of Purgatory, for people who don't know,
Yeah, sorry.
is you're doing a set where you can't hear the crowd response to your jokes. You're in a soundproof room.
Yes.
Is that, or you're soundproof?
Yeah. You have
Your
headphones on,
headphones that are
soundproof
soundproof.
headphones, and you are away from the
So
audience.
you get no response from your jokes. So you don't know how well something's doing.
Right. I would spend a lot of time thinking about these other parts of comedy, right? I'm not thinking about my relationship with my mom. I'm thinking about I'm trying to find things to think about in this kind of way. It's kind of a conversation, but it's weird because it's a conversation between you and a large group of people that really can only laugh or not laugh. Then I'm like, okay, what if you removed one part of that, right? Like, how could you? And I'm like, what would that mean?
So did you pitch that show to network or
Within 6 months, I live in LA.
from that show?
I think so. A manager approached me and all right, let's figure out a plan to do this. Their plan was like, let's get this show at whatever festivals we can. Here's how we get this show at festivals. So my life goes from, I know I'm going to have to move to LA or New York at some point, to the manager saying, I'm only going to sign you if you live in LA. And I was like, well, I'm going to live in LA in just a few months. Before long ending up at South by Southwest with it. And it was like I'm saying like a month or two. And I'm like, I've never done anything like this. I've gone from the mega bus to South by Southwest. I associate that time with like a level of excitement, but also kind of shell shock of like,
It's happening quickly.
yeah,
It's all happening. People are doing your shows who are bigger names too, right? Like you were doing,
and I'm very insecure about being the young annoying kid because that's how I feel, because it's kind of what I am in this situation. Nobody else is here for the first time in that way,
Right.
at that
Sure.
show, right? Somewhat over the next few years living on the road of doing this show in sometimes very modest circumstances and sometimes very elaborate and luxurious circumstances.
Are you with your wife or are you?
No, I have not yet met my wife.
So you haven't even met her yet.
No.
You're single, so you have no ties, so you can just kind of focus on your career.
I'm falling in love over and over again. Bombing towards therapy is the general vibe.
Your creative juices are not siphoned away with other things. You're focused on this 7-minute thing.
obsessed.
Right. Which is not good, but is good. I
Right.
get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're super motivated, and what happens next with the show?
We're doing it in Denver, and after the show, I'm told that there was a Comedy Central executive there, and that they want to talk, and then talks start, and talks turn into the way that kind of thing is like, great, I love you. Now let me introduce you to, I got to get this person on board. And then those two, great,
Right.
now let's go. Stand-up is also very important to me at this point, and I'm realizing that like stand-up works so differently in LA, and that it's, I'm trying to figure out like, how do comics get enough stage time here? You know, I get new faces pretty early on.
JFL,
in LA,
just
right?
for laughs.
That's,
Yes. It's a huge deal for comics. Yeah,
right.
At least you're doing stand-up
Oh,
during
for
your
sure.
show, because your show's going all over.
I'm blessed as far as that goes in some
Right,
ways,
right.
because
'Cause
I also have like I'm riding this wave, and like I'm getting more local
yeah.
shows than
In
that
LA.
I probably deserve at that point, right? But I'm also aware that it could all go away so quickly.
Right.
I'm like, oh, great, I need to do my 15 minutes that I know is great and also keep writing.
So what happens with the show? Like, why isn't it a fucking huge show right now?
It is, so they did 2 seasons on the Comedy Central Digital, right? Instead of doing like a pilot, what they would do is like, let's basically make a web series. The web series model kind of comes about because they can pay people so much less.
Right.
It meant that it was an easy way to go to a creative and be like, we'd love to try your idea. Only we're going to put $500,000 into this thing. Okay. We can give you 500.
Right.
I don't know that I'm exaggerating either of those numbers, but if I am, it's not the second one.
Have you thought about bringing the show back?
I would love to at some point.
You own the show, right?
I do, yeah.
I still love stand-up, but I also want to create something that's like a fun show where I could do this, like interviewing people, but there happens to be a lot of podcasts right now, so you have to kind of think outside the box.
Yeah.
And I think that you have that ability because of the way your brain thinks.
It's hard. If you look at something like Hot Ones, I've heard so many people in the industry say like, we're looking for our hot ones.
Yeah. Are you a night owl now?
Definitely. In my heart and soul now.
What are your hours now that you keep?
Erratic. So erratic.
Same.
But there's nothing better than 3 a.m. I adore 3 a.m.
So my hours generally are 3 to 4 a.m. Wake up at 11 to 12.
Amazing. I
Do
love
you
that.
need sleep? Some
For
people
sure.
don't. Okay.
I definitely.
So if you're up till 3, what time are you waking up these days? I know it's erratic, but
Right. So, okay, if I'm going to bed at 3, I try to hit 8 hours, right? I try to,
Sure.
Especially if I am up that late and I'm trying to have, and it all depends on the next day, really, right?
right, what you have to do.
Right.
But unfortunately, society doesn't accept our hours.
Yeah. And it's interesting because on some level, I think I've always been that way, but also stand-up has so pushed me in that direction. You get so much adrenaline late at night.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Go home and sit there?
What do you do after shows?
Right after performing, I feel very eager to get some alone time. That's how I feel immediately.
Sure.
To just kind of decompress. It's kind of letting go of that feeling I've had for at least the last hour, probably more than that. Mm-hmm. There have been times lately where the TV will just be off and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, damn, dude, I'm just alive at 3 a.m. right now.
Decompressing.
Not mostly, but there are times when that happens, right?
Are you creative after a show? Or are you
sometimes definitely, but the way that I am creative is almost exclusively with a blank page. So a blank page, though, is your brain can do anything with a blank page, and it's not the same as you can't make a movie on a blank page, but you can make up a movie on a blank page, mm-hmm. right?
Sure. After the show, do you ever listen to your sets or listen?
Not right after.
Okay.
No.
Me neither. You're obviously not falling asleep.
Mm-mm.
So what are ways you do to occupy your brain time?
I'll go between writing jokes, which can feel like free writing or like organizing thoughts kind of stuff. Research, I'm very into. Anything from reading random Wikipedia pages to skimming through a book. I love to dig deeper, especially if there is any kind of connection to comedy. I love to really study something, right? My wife goes to bed at a more reasonable hour. If she's up late,
is she a creative too, or does she have a normal life?
Very much is a creative.
Okay.
Yeah. We're a manic pixie dream couple.
Okay.
Yeah. She plays the harp and does pottery and makes puppets, and she's a talent agent.
Hippie,
so we're we're a weirdo family over here.
Sure. When you don't have shows and you're just up late at night, she's asleep, what are you doing?
Man.
If you weren't doing this podcast, what were you going to be doing tonight?
I know that, yeah, so I would write. Yeah,
Okay. Do you write at your own house or you go somewhere?
Sometimes I love a very sparse writing environment. I love, I heard early on that Mitch Hedberg's favorite place to write was like the Target cafeteria area. And I was just like, dude, I love that.
Yeah.
Because like he said, you could never get too comfortable.
Let's talk about now. You just had a special. It was listed in the New York Times as one of the best specials of 2023.
I believe so.
That's weird. I knew another special that was released in 2023 that wasn't on that list. I think it was like 27. They called me and they're like, "Oh, you didn't
I hear
make
you.
it."
If I was doing the rankings, you would have been much higher. If that.
How great is that? The greatest, other than your marriage, is that the greatest thing that's happened to you? To me, the fact that you met Conan O'Brien is like, I mean,
that was surreal. It was. Yeah,
he's
that was
my
unreal.
hero.
Yeah,
like he's changed my life. I have a tattoo of his saying on my arm.
I love that.
Was that obviously top 10 moment of your life?
For sure. Yeah. That whole experience was wild. Trying not to be too nervous, but also at that point having like a very strong routine. So like I knew, okay, I'm going to be performing in an hour. I need to chug some coffee. Like they just bullshit like that.
On that episode, you do the collar, the shock collar bit.
Yeah.
That's a variable in a stand-up set that you can't control. This is live television. Were you kind of like freaked out by that, or were you like, I can't wait till that part?
I had been adamant that I really wanted it to be like an actual audience member that didn't know it was coming.
For those that don't know, he does a bit where he puts a dog shock collar around his neck and he gives a random member of the audience a button to push when he doesn't like the joke.
Yep. Lady in the front row.
It was a lady, that's right.
My go-to is like, could I get a volunteer? And there's always at least one person whose hand goes up, and I say, that was too quick. Don't shock me all of the time, right? There's little ways to communicate these things.
Yeah.
And then you look for, I usually look for a lady that is with a guy. If you give it to the guy, he'll want to do it too much, and she'll do it just enough, and he'll make sure she's doing it. Is like the general plan.
Yeah.
That's not like that goes, there's a million variables in that.
But it went well on the show, obviously.
For sure. And it's like most of the time, whoever you give it to is wanting to...
Sure.
You know, and I was lucky that it was a lady that was having a lot of fun with it. It was awesome.
So you had that experience, which is amazing. And then your special is listed as the top of 2023.
Conan was particularly fun.
Sure.
It was much more of a victory lap.
Right.
The other stuff, JFL is like nerve-wracking beyond belief.
These are all accolades that comedians look up to. But a New York Times thing is not something a comedian puts on their list of a vision board to happen.
It was very cool.
But it's a fucking cool credit.
Thank you
so
so
much
for saying that.
Smart credit.
That means the world, Paul.
I mean, it's not me. If I can say it all I want.
I feel like I'm feeling it in full for the first time now that you're saying it.
You better be emailing everybody and be like, hey, I want to do your show. And then it's just a picture of you holding the New York Times top comedy specials.
Those pictures. That's what they do when they have like hostages and stuff, right? They make them hold a newspaper so that they know the day.
Yeah.
It felt so surreal. I remember people asking me how it felt, and I remember that week saying, I'm breathing through imposter syndrome, which meant I'm feeling it. I'm trying to just like appreciate it. And also it's a little overwhelming and like, oh my God, can I do enough with this? Can I email enough people? Will this do this? Can I do this instead? Etc.
We all experience imposter syndrome, but like now it's like you can't ever feel imposter syndrome at this point.
That's insane to me.
You have a fucking, I mean,
I feel blessed, right? I'm getting stressed out even thinking about it now, where I'm just, I feel like healthier if my brain could accept this so easier. I should meditate on that.
For me, it's like, I feel like I'm a hardworking comedian.
But absolutely are.
I don't have the skill sets to be as funny as people like you. And I take what I have and I fucking work hard. You work hard and you have these skill sets. And it's like, you have this advantage over so many comedians. It's like, you have to use it.
You have this incredible comedy career, and there's this entire life as a legitimate and impressive lawyer that I know is not the same, that it is a separate thing, right? I'm not saying that those need to conflate, but I'm saying that the degree to which that blows my mind that a person could do all that and then go and consistently crush at the Laugh Factory.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
But these are all cries for attention from our parents. So obviously,
I mean, for me, for sure,
Yeah,
dude. Yeah, of course.
if we can just get the love of our dad.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we went way too fucking long here.
I love it, dude.
I think it's mostly
yeah,
your fault.
I'll have to come back.
I got to edit. This is going to be like a 6-parter. This is the longest podcast we ever had. We ran out of film 4 fucking times.
We did.
Where can people find out more about you and your upcoming shows and projects?
I have another special coming out soon that I'm shooting. But see, the heist is free on Tubi.
On Tubi.
Hey, come on.
And where can people find out more about your upcoming shows? Do you have a website or Instagram?
Yeah, I have a website, Instagram.
Okay, good.
Instagram is probably what I'm using most these days. Yeah.
Thank you for doing the podcast, and thank you all for watching another episode of Why Are You Awake? Go to sleep.